Live.
Okay, we're back live this morning, Senate Transportation Committee, and we're going to discuss S-231, I believe. We have DMV with us this morning to talk about excess motor vehicle noise. I think it's also being discussed in the House. I don't know what could be done, but anyway, we'll Tony's with us this morning, I believe. Sure, would you give us a little what's going on here, Tony, with this piece of legislation, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Tony Fakis, Director of Enforcement and Safety for Vermont DMV. In this bill, it talks about making a specific violation to the basically a defective equipment statute in 1221, where if you remove baffles or an exhaust to prevent that doesn't have a muffling capability, thus creating excessive noise. Officially, we're kind of neutral on this position, but I will refer to our periodic inspection manual that for cars and trucks, if there's a problem with the muffling part, not the EPA part, that it is advisory only, so it's not a reject. However, on a motorcycle, if you remove the baffles or if you use an aftermarket exhaust muffling system that says for not for highway use or off-road use only, then it's a reject. So there's also, I just want to point out, excuse me, besides our periodic inspection manual, just kind of a little more philosophical conversation as we think about other pieces of legislation. For example, in the House, there was a bill H635 that talks about secondary motor vehicle violations, where law enforcement, just like if they would not, as a primary, would not be able to enforce certain things by themselves, and that bill has serious concerns for certainly our department when we think about commercial vehicle enforcement. But in one of the sections, it specifically states for the types of secondary violations that bill lists, it does list section 1221. So I just wanted to flag that when we think about appropriate use of law enforcement time, how we're looking at everything that we're trying to accomplish and do. As a former police officer and police chief, I'm sensitive to that. And also, there's other options that are also available for communities and for law enforcement to deal with excessive noise, which I will say can be a very concerning problem. For example, the city of Montpelier has an ordinance for unnecessary vehicular noise. So under state statute under 1008, which refers to municipal ordinances, you can take enforcement action under a municipal violation that way, as well as depending on the nature of the problem, all the way up to even disorderly conduct, if it's at nighttime and whatever the case may be. So I just, and I also want to mention that there's certain manufacturers of factory vehicles, for example, Chevrolet and Dodge in particular, that actually have exhaust system bypasses in their higher end, high performance vehicles. Camaro, I believe Corvette, Dodge, like the Hellcat series of a Dodge Challenger, where essentially there's a factory EPA approved, but factory controlled valve. So if the vehicle has like a sport/track mode, actually redirects exhaust within the muffler chamber, but instead of going through the baffling process, it really becomes a straight pipe. Now, those are fully EPA compliant because, again, all of that action, that redirection happens after going through the full catalytic converter system. Also, other manufacturers, motorcycles, Harley Davidson, for example, has products called their high performance line called Screaming Eagle. Those pipes are EPA and highway approved for those modifications, but with aftermarket, it's sky's the limit. Going back to the periodic inspection manual, again, it's advisory. So I think I'm more of just any questions you may have for me at this point than saying one way or the other about the merits of this bill.
But presently, with the inspect your vehicle, you can't take your muffler off and put a straight pipe on it. if you know, you can't do that. You're saying the new ones are coming from the factory, but that would be a national issue. But you can't inspect a car today. And the other thing is, how would you ever, I mean, I know there are noisy vehicles from time to time, but how would you ever enforce such a policy? It would be disastrous to try to even go down that road. I think that's my opinion.
Senator, that's exactly correct. That's always been a huge challenge because it's very subjective unless you have an ordinance or statute that deals specific with decibel readings from
Right.
a qualified machine and device with a trained operator. I do know, I don't even know if they still operate, but many of the motor officers from the New York State Police would provide serious enforcement operations, checking for where they had the tools to measure both, looking for EPA as well as noise violations. I can't speak beyond that, but I don't even know if they're still conducting that level of enforcement operation because it was very labor intensive. Again, balancing all the other priorities of law enforcement today.
I don't know how you, well, go ahead. Committee members, go ahead, jump right in.
And I want to be careful how I say this, Mr. Fakos. But when a senator had presented his amendment or his bill to us, it kind of sounded like just sounded like the police chief was maybe just kind of shuffling along the responsibilities of what they could do on loud noise complaints, if there was already probably precedent set that if it was an intrusive sound that they would have decibel meter of some sort, probably didn't have the tool to do that. But it sounds like there's, and I think you just touched upon it again, so I'm not trying to repeat what you just said, but it sounded like there was already laws in place that would, if something was really, really obtrusive, that something could be done. The police chief, the presenter of the bill made it sound like the police chief really didn't have anything at his disposal to stop these louder exhausts.
Yeah, I mean, my path where I came from, you know, we had an ordinance. We did use that ordinance occasionally. A lot of times we, you know, for the most part, we just provided educational opportunities for those interactions with our officers. But not every jurisdiction either has the ability or has ordinances in place to utilize both the state statute as well as municipal ordinances. And all I can refer to is what's in the periodic inspection manual. You know, so to your point, I'm just reading from page 51 of the periodic inspection manual, and it says advise customer if there is a muffler cutout or similar device that allows excessive noise. I would even argue that, you know, if I were to purchase a brand new Camaro ZL1, for example, that and I took it to and I'm the inspection mechanic, I would probably, do I notify the customer that your vehicle from the factory is equipped technically, advising you that it does have a mechanism that allows for a cutoff to divert.
And it sounds like instead of making a state law on this, that the senator might, and it sounded like the senator had gone to his town council, select board or whatever, and if they didn't have an ordinance in place, that maybe that they ought to start there with the ordinance first before we make a state law of it. When it just sounds like it's for me, it sounds like an overreach and hard to enforce at a state level, especially if the town doesn't have an ordinance to begin with it.
Senator Chittenden, you had your hand
So
up.
on that point, if I recall correctly, does this have to do with inspection? And I think I heard you say, Tony, that right now bikes have to conform, but cars don't in the inspection, or if it's a fail versus
Well, all I'm saying is there's a slight difference, but generally, if you're talking about noise and muffling, not the emissions part of the system, it is advisory. The only thing I just wanted to point out, and I'm referring to page 69 of the periodic inspection manual on motorcycles, where it's a reject the vehicle. Number 5, any muffler or catalytic converter, if so equipped, is present that is not original factory installed equipment, not equivalent replacement equipment, or not designed for highway use. And my own personal experience, I've seen where these systems will say competition use or not for highway or off highway use only. There's some on that.
if I would follow up, but to Senator Engel's point, yeah, I don't want the Vermont State Troopers out there with a sound radar detecting how loud these things are. That doesn't seem like what we want to do. Leave it to the municipalities to have noise ordinances, and that's fully within their jurisdiction. But what I think we could do if we wanted to is to require the inspection process to be consistent with the bikes so that they can't intentionally make their cars louder and pass inspection in Vermont. But
one of the challenges, I mean, you can inspect the motorcycle or a car, and then as soon as you're done your inspection, the owner operator could immediately then remove a baffling system, for example, and a variety of things. So
This is a subject that, boy, I'll tell you, I hate to go down this road because it opens up all kinds of stuff, and I can't imagine poor police officer trying to enforce this or write a ticket, or I don't know. It's just, it's a tough one. I mean, I know there's going to be noise, there always has been, but I don't know how you're going to legislate something like this. Yes, Senator Perchlik.
Yeah, I think what the bill drafter tried to do is get away from all those problems you just brought up, because there isn't anything about the police trying to.
So what would it be? I didn't read.
It would just be on the inspection, at least the way I read it, and maybe the violation part, but if we don't even, that could be something that we take out, but it would just be during the inspection, if they notice that it is a straight pipe, they can't pass inspection.
They do it now. That's present law.
Well, no, if right now, my understanding is they're advised, as long as it's making its way through the muffler, there's the emission control. Like if you just get rid of if you cut out the muffler, you're not going to pass the emissions test. You're going to have a
Right.
problem there. So it's a question is, are there things that people are doing to make their cars louder, but still having it go through the muffler, through the emissions, the catalytic converter? That's the part. Like you can go through the catalytic converter, but then still have it straight pipe from there.
I think we'd have to hear from all the inspection stations or something, or the organization or something, that what the problem is today. I don't know. Why is it any different today than it was 5 years ago?
I don't think it is. I think it's just, people getting upset when a loud car goes by. I know here there's a person that works across the street and parks their car, and they have a very loud car, and it is annoying when they come in the morning and leave in the afternoon. So I think some people are just like, can't we do something about it? And there is the local authorities can do something about it, but this is just an attempt to see, because you might buy the car, maybe you didn't do it. You could just convert it back over after the inspection, like Chief Faco said, but maybe somebody picks it up. They don't know that why it's so loud. They might like it that loud, but so, I understand some of the difficulties, but I wonder if there is, some way we can help a little bit with the vehicle noise. And I think other states have done this. There is an organization in Vermont, and they're based in Montpelier, called the Noise Pollution Clearinghouse, that basically just kind of tracks all noise pollution laws. So I was going to reach out to them and just see if other states have addressed this issue in a way that doesn't put a burden on police trying to figure it out with decibel meters, or just like, that sounds loud. Because I agree with that we're not going to go there.
Any other comments? Senator Chittenden?
real quick, Tony, I think I heard you say that you're kind of ambivalent on this as a from your perspective, and is that true?
Yeah, our department position is we're neutral on this. And the other thing I just want to add, just for again, if this were, depending on how this eventually sugars out, but under D of this section, it does have where it says the individual who violates subsection B of this section shall be subject to civil penalty of not less than, and then it has a 3-tiered escalating violation. So again, I just, because this has to do with operation, so it's not just the inspection process.
That part with the change.
And Tony, I guess it's just different standards. We spent a lot of time when we were talking about the decibels of snow machines, and I remember that doing quite a bit. I think we even talked some about vessels, and some about motorcycles, but cars are just a little bit of a different standard. than what we're, than those other, maybe because they're more of a mainstay and the other ones are seen more recreational. I don't know. It just seems like it is a little bit more ambivalent as far as with motor vehicles versus with some of what they could call as sports. Although there's modes of transportation of like motorcycles, but just I think you get what I'm trying to say.
Okay, anybody else? Senator Kitchell, do you have some comments?
Well, no, I was just trying to think. We passed a noise ordinance, and it had to do with snowmobiles, and
Yes.
it made reference to the tag
Right.
and so forth. And so it does seem like we have, for some motive, well, I guess we call them motor vehicles. I don't know if we have this for boats or not, but we do
Sure.
have certain noise standards, and I can appreciate if you're cars are going through people's neighborhoods, and so I know some municipalities have, you can't use your Jake brakes, for example, when you're going through the village or whatever. So it does seem. So I'm getting back to snowmobiles. How was that enforced? Was that just as part of trail enforcement? I don't think do we inspect? Do we inspect snowmobiles?
No, not that. Snowmobiles are dealt with from a different set of law
Yeah.
enforcement operations, and
Yeah.
so because
So-
it's not highway use, that's where our inspection manual.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're talking about highway use vehicles, although, so I sympathize. I sympathize with someone who's, in a neighborhood, if they've got someone who really is, I've got someone that goes up and down my road. It actually hurts your ears when that vehicle goes up. It's so loud. And I can really appreciate what it's like if you've got, where that happens frequently. But it looks like you're back to almost like enforcing speed limits on, your village streets or the use of Jake brakes.
For the record, if I get a couple points, Senator, if I may, one is, I think these types of problems, depending on the community, can be resolved through, again, law enforcement referrals to community justice center, something that the state of Vermont has invested heavily in, for almost like a enable it for ongoing problems in communities, without just being a monetary fine. So I think law enforcement, in a very high problem area, does have some resources. And also, two, as far as the use of a Jake brake, that is a safety feature. So, of trucks. So they need, that as far as banning those would be problematic.
Well, it's not an easy subject, I can tell you that.
Oh, I wasn't suggesting that. I was
No,
just saying
just-
municipalities did that.
I have a complaint in my town but he lives on a curve. And every time someone goes around that curve, they step on the gas, and regardless of what it is, it makes noise. And there's going to be those instances, and I don't know how you're ever going to, I don't know. I'm open to suggestions, but I don't know how you're ever going to do something to do what's happening. And other than the inspection program, and like you say, if you can inspect your car on a Tuesday and Wednesday you want to put a straight pipe, and then wait a year and come back and put it on again and switch it. I don't know. I don't know those.
I'm just always cautious about us legislating law when the presenter and maybe a few people in this town, just a very few people in this town, were the only ones that are aggrieved by the situation. And now, if this is something that we're getting complaints, and all of us are getting complaints about, statewide, constituents based, I think it ought to be handled on the town level first before we make a law about it. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, Senator Ingalls, when it comes to enforcement. I'm just, the one thing I keep catching on is the inconsistency with bikes and autos. Is there value, Tony, in being consistent so that they're both rejects from an inspection standard? Why do we have it on bikes and not cars?
I don't have a clear answer for you, Senator, on that, but I can research why that I would assume it would be very similar, because I know there's a lot of exhaust systems that you can buy for your vehicle that I'm sure are not approved for highway use.
Yes, Senator Pertzik.
Well, if it's okay, Senator Mazza, I can see if I can reach the guy from the Noise Pollution Clearinghouse just to see if other states have tried to deal with it in a way that doesn't burden law enforcement.
That's a
And
good idea. Yeah.
I think it might be a lot. I think the answer might be that it has been dealt with just by municipalities passing their own ordinances and deciding to direct their own police, having neighbors call and just say, hey, there's a Honda Civic out here that's really loud, and, be dealing
Yeah,
with.
I'm sorry, Senator Pertzik, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
I mean, and just saying it a little bit clearer than what I just said. If maybe the presenter's town just didn't want to deal with it. And maybe that they ought to. And I just don't think that until we know that. And I think with what you had said, Senator Pertzik, about going to see how it's been addressed already, I just don't think that we ought to be considering making a law if the town's not even willing to deal with it.
Plus, the town might not have local police departments also. I mean, how are they going to enforce something they don't even have coverage? I mean,
Well, sheriff departments and, stuff. I mean,
yeah, but you got to catch them at the scene when they're
Yeah.
doing it. It's pretty hard to say this car did it. So you almost got to be there when it happens. And that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
That's like going through a stop sign, or the officer has to almost be there to see it happen.
Up in Inglesway, they have constables on horses, so maybe.
Yeah.
yeah. We don't, horses make different sounds. We don't have to worry about, we worry about loud exhaust, but it isn't like that.
Do we have someone in the waiting room? Blaine Newton, is that correct?
He's in the meeting now, sir.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. And you're on this subject here?
No,
Oh, okay, not on this subject. All right. Okay. All right. Anybody else on this subject of the noise? Okay. Well, I thank you, Tony, for coming in this morning, and we'll give us some thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Okay, do we have Beta? Are they available now, or I know it's a little earlier than we thought.
Yeah, Senator, I'm here from Beta.
Oh, you're here from Beta. Okay, all right. Oh, good. Senator Chittenden, anything you'd like to add before Blaine
Sure, I'll
goes
say a
on?
couple. Blaine, thanks for finding time. I was asked to just do a quick little setting of the table on this, and I just want to say I'm glad to have you in here. We had the aviation budget presented, and the conversation came up about Burlington International Airport and working with Beta. And I think the point was we hear that you're working well with the state, and this important group just wants to hear more about what Beta is doing. I'm excited about a $120 million facility of state-of-the-art aviation aircraft in the great city of South Burlington. And on the noise subject, as a South Burlington City Councilor, I love Beta because they're quiet. So the neighbors are happy, they're electric, and so this is the right type of aircraft to address the noise concerns that I personally have heard many times over the years. So Blaine, thanks for being here today, and I think everybody just wants to hear about Beta and how you've been interacting with the state.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I live in Colchester, and we hear a lot of good things about Beta, and it was interesting to find out some of the little background of what's happening. We know they're a very valued industry in this area. So go right ahead and tell us a little something about the company and what it's all about. Thank you for
Awesome.
coming.
No, thank you. And it's an honor to be here. And thank you for your time. I know you guys have a lot going on.
That's all right. We got time. Go right ahead.
Would it be helpful if I just threw a few slides up to kind of walk you
Sure.
through who we are, what we're doing? Okay, just give me a sec
Great.
here.
That would be great. For those who don't know who we are.
See if I can share. Can you guys see the slides that I have up?
We're waiting. Okay, there we go. There we go.
Great.
Wow.
So again, I appreciate the time. And we started out about 4 years ago when there was about 8 people in a room in a garage with a kind of set out on a mission to create a future of sustainable aviation. We think the only way to really combat the climate change issues facing us is actually take action and do something about it. aviation accounts for about 9% of all transportation-related emissions, transportation-related emissions, and by 2035 will be 50% of that. And we've kind of reached that point where the technology is such that we think we can make a significant change to the market. So who are we? And for what it's worth, if you haven't been up here, I know Senator Shitney, you have. For others who haven't been here, we'd love to host you and walk you around and see what we're doing. We're thrilled to show the folks what we're doing. You can see a simulator down at the bottom. We'll get you up in the air flying it as well. But who are we? We're pragmatic and driven. It's why we love being in and growing in Vermont. Is the pragmatism that you get from folks here is just a little bit different than you get elsewhere. Most of our competitors are out in Silicon Valley, and we get on calls and we ask where they're calling from, and they say, well, we're calling from the Valley. And we say, which one? Champlain. It just, we have a different way of going about things here that drives simplicity and pragmatism. And the way we're thinking about it is the really enabling technology behind electric aviation is, this is going to sound silly, but is electrification. It's the electric propulsion systems. So at our core, we're a propulsion company building insanely reliable electric power plants that, 150-pound entire motor system that puts off 600 horsepower that lasts for 15,000 hours and puts off zero emissions is really our focus here. And we're partnering with the best in the world in the aerospace ecosystem on other parts of the aircraft. We're also providing a full system solution. So we're not just the aircraft. That's a big part of it, obviously, is what people see. But in order to enable this, what we see as a revolution in electrification, we're also building out charging capabilities that we'll talk a little bit more about. And the picture on the bottom is here at the Burlington Airport, as well as training capabilities. And we're partnering with members of the community like Vermont Technical College and Burlington Technical Schools as Randolph, and then as well as Vermont Flight Academy here at the airport to train folks, not just to be pilots in electrification, but also technicians. We need, by our estimates, we need to supply our fleet 7,000 pilots and 7,000 technicians by the end of the decade that understand electric aircraft and electrification. So we're starting out building out that training capability as well. And the reason we got into this space was that, and we're choosing cargo and electric and medical first, and military first. And you see a lot of our competitors in this space, and they're about flying folks that have the means over traffic to save an hour a day. And while that'll happen, I'm sure, we think this is an opportunity to connect communities in ways that haven't been connected in an awful long time. So whether that's getting organs, which was the initial mission set for this, was to deliver organs to hospitals in an all electric fashion and land on the landing pads of the hospitals to save lives, or whether it's to move our, getting troops the parts they need and the supplies they need quickly, safely, reliably, cost effectively. And then we're seeing with UPS as a partner and Amazon investing in us, the desire to keep pace with this shift to e-commerce, but they want to do it in an environmentally sustainable way. So that's our focus. And because of the cost point of this, right? So if you think about the cost of this aircraft to fly, it's about 10 times less than flying a similarly capable helicopter. And it really comes down to the electric motor is just much more reliable and less maintenance goes into it. But the core of it is to decarbonize for aviation. Now, this is the aircraft. It looks, it's a big aircraft, doesn't look it here, but it's 50 feet across in the wingspan, carries about 4 full pallets inside its cargo hold, and comfortably 6 passengers. On today's battery energy density, which is doubling every 7 years or so, we get about 250 nautical miles of range. We think of it as it's utilitarian. We think it's beautiful, but it's utilitarian. It's kind of like we call it the flying Ford F-150, right? You wouldn't design an F-150 that didn't fit plywood in the back, or a full sheet of plywood in the bed, and you wouldn't design a cargo aircraft that doesn't fit a full pallet in the back. And that's why we've designed this to be set up and ready to go within UPS's network today. It's also super quiet. So speaking of the noise issue, it's essentially ambient air overhead. So when it's flying, we actually had a member of the senior leadership team from UPS, and he was witnessing a flight test, and he turned and asked me, he said, "Is something wrong? I can't hear it." Well, that's the point, right? That's
That's what I feel about an automobile. When you get in and you can't hear it. It's
You
electric
can't hear it,
car.
right? It's pretty remarkable. Up here in this kind of corner of Vermont, we've quietly made some pretty good progress that puts us at the head of the line. We're the first electric aircraft to ever be approved to fly between airports and outside of our little test box. We flew from Plattsburgh to here, and we go back and forth quite a bit. We're getting ready to fly down to Rutland, which we're pretty excited about because it's the first state-owned airport to be electrified in the country. So we're excited to get ready to fly down to Rutland.
Does that mean, excuse me, does that mean when you get to Rutland, you can charge it there? They have a charging facility?
They sure do. They
Okay,
sure do.
it has to be a special charging unit, right? I mean, it's,
Yeah, so we're using we'll talk a little more detail
Okay.
about it, but it's our charging system, but we're using an internationally recognized standard so that, again, our mission is to inspire folks to build electric aircraft. And so if somebody lands at Rutland, whether it's our aircraft or another aircraft, they can plug into it.
I see. Okay.
So it's, Tesla went with the model of you have to drive a Tesla to use their charger. We went a different direction and said that anyone can plug in. But yeah, it's a special charger in that it can charge up to 900 volts. We have a 1.2 megawatt peak power load into the aircraft. So your standard kind of electric charger doesn't work for that. But our charger can also just charge any electric car that's out there too. So it can
How
do
long
both.
would it take to charge? How long would it take to charge that plane?
If you completely depleted the battery energy in it, about 50 minutes on your typical mission, it's about a half an hour.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, that was part of the organ transplant mission. We had to design a system that got the organ there on time. So part of it was designing fast charging capabilities around it,
Wow.
for sure. But back to our flight test program. If you live up here in Chittenden County, you may see it flying overhead. We did 2 test flights yesterday. We were the first aircraft in history, first electric aircraft in history to be awarded a military flight release for the Air Force. So we're doing flight tests with the Air Force. They're training 4 pilots now to come up and fly it with us in the next month or two. We have a simulator en route being towed down to San Antonio where they have a training detachment. And they're getting ready, 85 airmen and women ready to fly our aircraft in 2023 when we ship them down 30 aircraft. So pretty exciting to be part of the Air Force programs down there. We set a record flight in an electric aircraft. It was only on 3 out of our 5 battery packs. And we didn't actually announce it. Some journalist tracked our tail number and reported it on our behalf, which I suppose is interesting. And we think we're going to be first to certification. We have our certification basis filed with the FAA. We expect to be fully certified at the end of 2024. And then that facility that Senator Chittenden talked about at the end of the airport here can start pumping out 300 aircraft a year to UPS, Amazon, United Therapeutics, and the Air Force, which exciting because there'll be a lot of really high-paying jobs here in Vermont. As we talked about a range of charging solutions, Senator Mazza, what you see on the left here, that tower, is what's down in Rutland right now. One side of it charges the aircraft. The other side can charge a Tesla or Nissan Leaf or a airport truck, whatever it may be.
Wow.
We have a number of these, and the one on the top right is what we call kind of an airport in a box. It's what you'd put in a hospital parking lot for the organ mission. So you're up above ground level, so it's secure for kids and cars and whatever else is out there. And there's crew rest stations and a control room. So we have 7 of those going on the East Coast right now. There's big airports in a box with another 193 to follow for a total of 100. And we have 11 of those other chargers in the ground now, going down to Arkansas to get down to San Antonio for our Air Force missions initially, and then down to the East Coast for the Oregon mission. And so by right now we have 60 of these either in process or active live being used by aircraft and cars, mostly cars right now, including the one down in Rutland. And we're looking to electrify a few more in the state, whether it be Middlebury or up to Highgate or wherever it may be. But we're excited to make Vermont the first electrified aviation state in the country. We'll have 500 of these charging units in by the end of 2025 to create this network effect for regional air mobility and connecting communities for rural health or e-commerce or whatever else mission may come about. For those of you who haven't been here, we're growing pretty fast up here at the North Hangar. People used to drive by the building we're in now on the way to the airport. I don't think anyone paid attention to it. I know I sure didn't. It was kind of a falling down, dilapidated wreck, and probably would have been best to tear it down, but the most sustainable building is one that's already there. So we've put about $13 million into turning it into our R&D center. When we started the renovation, we had 30 or so people. We're up to about 350, of which 90% are in the state of Vermont. It's actually, I just got a stat today. In 2021, we recruited 68 people back into the state of Vermont from 20 different states. So as part of that, so we are focusing here in Vermont hard to create the to hopefully make it the epicenter of electric aviation, electric propulsion. I don't see a reason why Vermont can't be a world leader in the electrification of transportation, which we believe is imminent. And that'll be through attracting folks here for good jobs, of which, as we talk about the next steps in our plans, is we're building this about 400,000 square foot production facility in the bottom left corner here at the end of the airport. Hopefully, we have some production ongoing over in Williston now. We have a cultural and training center going in at the airport. We're in conversations with folks up in Franklin County about potential testing capabilities up at the old Energizer plant. We're in conversations with some of the folks in Agency of Transportation about leveraging some of the state airports, whether it be Caledonia or otherwise, for testing. We think in doing that and partnering at the high school level and the technical school level and the college level, we have an opportunity to whether it be electrifying aircraft or boats or snowmobiles or tractors or cars, to use the pragmatism here in Vermont to build out this future ecosystem of transportation. This building we're building in the bottom right is a net zero building. There's 300 geothermal wells for heat sinks. We're recapturing rainwater for sewage and waste. And that's going to be where you're going to roll 300 of these aircraft a year off the line to support our mission. And we're going to need probably 800 people in that building to do it, plus these other testing capabilities where we'll need a couple hundred people in St. Albans. And, we'll need a few hundred people building motors over in Williston. And where else can we expand and grow? And how do we recruit that talent into Vermont and from within Vermont? How do we look to
how are you able, Blaine, how are you able to spend so much money when your return isn't going to come in a few years? So you got a lot of money right now. I mean, that's going to be a difficult task.
It turns out building an aerospace company is about like setting just piles of money on fire at some level. It's a tough game.
Because it's a.
But we've, it's a great question, sir, and we've been really fortunate to attract some investors. First, some local investors that wanted to build Vermont stronger and build a strong company in the state. Well, we were really fortunate for a few years to do that. And then we attracted Fidelity and Amazon's Climate Pledge Fund and a number of others to raise about $370 million earlier in the year. And now we're working to raise enough to take us through when we're cash flow positive in 2025 and 6. Wow. But we've also been really pragmatic about it, right? So whereas other companies have gone to the public markets and are now kind of required to deal with public shareholders, we've kind of kept ourselves a little bit quiet, and we spend frugally as much as we can. And our competitors one of our competitors now has 1,500 people and has raised $2 billion. We've raised $370 million, which is a lot of money. Let's be clear. And we have 350 people, and we've been at it for about half the time they have. And we have 2 flying aircraft, and they've just flew their first one. So if you're pragmatic and you spend money as if it's your own, one of the big things here with employees is, and when you come here, you'll see, we don't have a command and control hierarchy. We give everybody that works here ownership in the company, and we trust them to make decisions in the best interest of the company. They don't have to ask for permission to buy something or build something or try something, because we know that they're doing it with the best interest of the company at heart, because we know they're owners of the company. They own stock in the company. And that's everyone, from folks, cleaning the floors to people at senior level engineers. It doesn't matter. And so I think because of that pragmatism, we've been able to stretch our money a bit more than others. But yeah, and the other thing is we have customer contracts. So for United Therapeutics, instead of taking kind of a capital, instead of taking an investment, we wanted to earn our money. So we asked for a contract instead, and we're earning our money against that contract. Same with the Air Force. And with the Air Force, we can start selling them aircraft before we're certified. So there'll be 30 aircraft flying around in San Antonio in 2023 and 2024 coming out of this building here you see on the bottom left to help us with that cash. But it's a great question, super insightful, and it's an expensive endeavor to build an aerospace company for sure.
Wow.
And for what it's worth, we've gotten great partnerships with the state. So the North Hangar addition this one back here on the top left, we were fortunate enough to receive a veggie grant to help support that. And at the time, we thought we were going to add maybe 60 or 70 jobs and spend, I think it was $8 million. We ended up spending about 12, and we've brought in 200. So we exceeded the goals of the veggie grant, and it really allowed us to accelerate in the building it faster than we thought we otherwise could. So we've been really, and the training grants we've received from the state have helped us bring people in that may not have expertise in electric propulsion, but we've been able to leverage those to do that, or test pilot school, for example. So, it's just being smart about how you deploy the capital and leveraging support and investment from entities like the state in smart, pragmatic ways. This is just a kind of a cool picture here. The beta's about building and team, and passion. And we have this thing, we hire, somebody asked me yesterday, what's a perfect candidate at beta? And it's someone who's not afraid to get their hands dirty and build something, knowing that it may not work just right, because that's how you expose gaps and fix it, right? And you got to be passionate about that endeavor. And so we screen people for three things. We want them to be passionate about 2 out of 3 of them. And it's sustainability, it's aviation, and it's curiosity, whether it's technological curiosity or otherwise. And we want them to be builders. And the thinking being is that if they're passionate about 2 of the 3 of the things that we talk about, which is sustainability, aviation, and technology, that they're going to mathematically share a passion with everyone else in the building. And it turns out that when you pull people together that are passionate about solving a problem, and they're not just checking in and doing a job, you're able to accelerate and do a lot more than you otherwise would. Half the people in this picture are interns. We brought in 65 interns from Vermont colleges, from Vermont high schools, from technical centers, to help build and fly these airplanes, and showing that there's an opportunity to stay in the state and build a job. One of the guys we got, can't see him, he's actually in this picture, but he's kind of tucked away in the back. That he came down, he was doing some volunteer work up at the Highgate Airport, passionate about aviation, and he was a high school kid, and he said, hey, I heard about you guys, can I come work there? He ended up being one of our most valuable resources last summer, and he went away to Clarkson for a few semesters, but he's going to come back to Vermont. And when he talked to us about it, he's like, look, I wouldn't have been able to stay in Vermont and pursue a passion unless you guys were here. And that's what we're trying to figure out how to do across the state, is inspire people to get excited about electrification, get excited about aviation, and come help us, build and stay to the company that we'd like to be, which is, north of 1,000 high-paying jobs here in the state. So, and I just can't say enough how much I appreciate the support we've gotten from Senator Chittenden and really everyone in the state government this far, from the governor on down. It's just been remarkable. And being able to share it with you all now is, again, thank you. Just really appreciate the time and energy you're willing to spend with us.
So
happy to answer any questions you guys got and go into more detail if that's necessary.
Sure. Go ahead. Anybody got any questions? Yes, Senator Berklick.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. The electrification of the other Vermont airports, you know, I didn't see them on your map of the future places, but you did mention it. So I just wondered if you're thinking of doing that in the context of the UPS contracts, because I know they fly into some other state airport, or like your own use of test flights and things like that.
Yeah, we actually met with Trini Broussard yesterday about that very topic. She came by to see us, and how do we, and UPS, we just supported their board meeting down in Louisville yesterday, and the conversation was around how do we start doing test missions with UPS, so revenue generating for them, gaining hours for us, test missions. And they said, you know, maybe we can do it in Alaska or Abu Dhabi or no, UAE, I guess it was. And we said, well, why don't we do it in Vermont? And so we're working now with Trini to figure out how to connect the state airports and create this regionalized cargo and logistics setup. And UPS loved it. And the reason they love it is the mission they want to use with this airport. So if you think about with this aircraft, if you think about UPS's logistics network today, if I ship something to Syracuse, New York, right now it goes on a package car to Williston, gets sorted, gets brought to the airport, put on a 40-year-old turboprop, flown to Manchester, New Hampshire, sorted and put on a 757 to Louisville, sorted overnight, put on a 757 back to Syracuse, and put on a package car to go out. What UPS would like to do is be able to fly direct from a distribution center in Williston to Syracuse distribution center and skip that entire hub routing. And it saves time, saves costs, it improves quality. And then when they land in Williston, because this aircraft is so inexpensive to operate, on a per package basis, it's not too far off a truck. They can then hop around. So say they land in Williston from Manchester. Well, now they can go to White River, and they can go to Rutland, and they can go to Bennington and Island Pond, or wherever they need to go. And what that does, and there's some really non-obvious benefits for folks that live in rural areas, right? Today, if I'm a craftsperson over in Greensboro, I probably have to have my stuff for an overnight shipment on UPS by 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By creating this direct point-to-point solution set and shortening that hub transit time, you now may be able to drop it off at 6 o'clock at night and still get it there. And that creates a really significant competitive, levels the competitive playing field in the e-commerce world. And from a commerce perspective, Amazon, both going into the Amazon network and out of the Amazon network, outside of, say, New York City or Boston, most folks like us in Vermont are on a 3 or 4 day delivery schedule or pickup schedule to get anything where we need to go. And if you spend any time shopping online, one of the first things a lot of folks look at is shipping time. And so the ability to create more competitive dynamics in rural settings becomes really compelling if you can do it in a cost-effective, sustainable way. And so long answer to your very specific question. Yes, we're talking directly with Trini on how to electrify those remainder of those airports and conduct test missions at them with UPS.
Okay, great.
Because you are brand new in this whole design, are all those parts for that plane, you have to make them all? I mean, you just can't pick up the phone and order them, right? You have to
No, it absolutely correct. And so everything is designed in-house from the ground up. All of the motor systems and battery systems are built here. And when you have the chance to come over, we'll show you. Copper comes in one door and goes onto the airplane and flies out the other door, right? So we make all the motors and systems internally in-house. We're partnering with folks to make the composite structures. We don't build those here. So there's a group out in Wichita that will make that composite structure, which when people look at it, like, well, that's the airplane. It's actually the simplest and least costly part of the airplane is that composite structure. It's the motors and batteries and systems inside. And we do all of that here in Vermont.
Just for the record, I'm across the street from all those boats out there, so it's just.
I thought that might be the case.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to have you talk a bit more because you made comment about how helpful and AOT and government and VITA. And obviously, we hear a lot about Vermont and businesses and how do we attract. And some of your comments seem to be very positive about the support your business had received. Vermont as a place that supports innovation and a nice place to be. And you have obviously a strong connection to the state, and you could have been any place in the United States. So could you just speak a bit more, and are there things that could have been done better, or what do you see that set Vermont apart from your perspective and your business?
Yeah, it's a great question, Senator Kitchell. And look, we were offered very rich incentive packages to move Texas, North Carolina, New York, Montreal. And so it wasn't about the money. It was really about the level of access and support we've gotten to grow, right? If you think about the aerospace industry, and I think a lot of industries like this, if you're an innovator and disruptor, you're competing against big companies that have been there for a while. And so your biggest advantage is speed and time. And so as we think about, Boeing and Airbus could write a $3 billion check and get it in this industry if they wanted to, but they're not going to be able to do it as quickly as us. And so when we thought about where do we want to build this business, it was about where can we do it fastest and most efficiently. And the level of support we've gotten to reduce friction on permitting and building things out and getting leases signed, because of the community and the size of the state and the ability to pick up the phone and call you folks or call the governor and say, hey, just need your thoughts on how to manage this, has allowed us to move incredibly rapidly. The reason that we're building this production facility down here at the end of the airport instead of, say, Arkansas, that it would be fully funded and we're writing a $120 million check out of pocket to do it, is because we think that the need to keep the engineers close to the initial production line is pretty critical from a time perspective and de-risking that certification time risk. And so when we looked up and said, well, it would take us months or years to figure out how to get it permitted in Arkansas or Florida, whereas we can just work closely with the city of Burlington and the city of South Burlington and their Senator Chittenden and others to make it happen. And that's the initial reason. And then the follow-on reason for that, for being in Vermont, is that the level of access we have to, say, go into Champlain College or UVM or Randolph Tech Center or Vermont Technical College, Burlington High School, some of the other high schools we're working with in the southern part of the state, and say, hey, will you work with us on designing curriculum so when the kids come out, they're ready to go. And to influence that type of trajectory has been just awesome. And that's what's going to win the day for us, not a couple extra $50 million, $100 million, $200 million now. It's the ability to deploy rapidly and get the talent we need quickly to win the long game. And it's hard to imagine a place outside of Vermont that provides those kind of intangible assets of access. And it's hard to quantify as a business, and sometimes investors look at it and say you've lost your mind. But if you just kind of put your head down and work those different angles, it becomes really compelling. I will say, one of the challenges we've run up against in recruiting is housing. So we've had to buy 7 cottages here near the airport, the old Kirby cottage, well, not old, the Kirby cottages that Senator Chittenden knows well, as a landing zone, I guess, for when folks come in from out of state and they can't find a place, they can stay there on us for 6 months or so while we partially subsidize it so they can find a place to live. That's a problem, I think, in a lot of places, but it's pretty acute for us as we're having to draw aerospace talent from outside the area. And I know a lot of good folks are doing work to solve for it. But that's one of the areas that has been kind of on the other side of why Vermont. But generally speaking, the level of access and the reduction in friction to moving quickly has been pretty wonderful.
You
Well,
sound
there are
so
advantages of being so small and nimble and being able to influence systems, whether it be, what our tech centers might be doing, or our colleges and connections back to workforce needs. And we've been putting quite a bit of money into upskilling in areas as well. So it's just kind of nice to get some feedback in terms of what is that experience, because I think sometimes, as you're pointing out, there are traditional things that you measure, but there are other very important considerations. In some areas, we call them, economic amenities, and to hear your direct experience, because obviously Senator Chittenden, and I think Senator Ash, we had took testimony earlier, several years ago, in terms of the work you're doing. So we are obviously very interested and very happy that you are here in Vermont. Even if it is Chittenden County and I live way over in the kingdom, but.
Well, it's funny, that was part of the conversation. One of the reasons that we really want, one of the amenities we give to employees is, and to fulfill that passion of aviation, is if you work here, you are, wouldn't say required, but it's just a step below required, to learn how to fly. So we have 20 training aircraft, a couple of electric ones that aren't ours, and 20 flight instructors. And so we now have, I think, 60 pilots and 180 in training or something like that. And so when we look to build facilities, we love to build them at airports, because flying beats the heck out of driving when you're trying to get across the state. And so when we talked to Trini yesterday, part of our conversations were, how do we take, so for instance, the charging solutions that we're building, we're taking recycled shipping containers and we're building our own sheet metal cases, and we have a large and expanding machine shop as well. Chittenden County is not necessarily a center of excellence for some of the skills we have going on. So is there a way for us to build capacity in Newport, in Caledonia, in Bennington, and start to build out that internal supply chain throughout the state at these state airports, to create efficiencies for us, but also meet the talent where they are. And so there's a real big desire on our part. And like I said, we're evaluating a battery testing facility in St. Albans, and we've been recruited to New York State for that at the airport in Plattsburgh. But man, if we can leverage that existing Energizer facility for what it was intended to be built for in the first place, that's awesome, because there's probably a talent pool that wants to work with batteries again. And so there's just, if you really get creative about how to think about deploying research, attracting talent in the state of Vermont, man, there's a lot of it, and it's just in pockets around the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a lot of very skilled machinists in the Northeast Kingdom, for example.
Exactly, that was exactly the conversation we had, and we've come to not rely on outside machine shops, because the level of precision and the turnaround time has just not kept up with what we need, and so we're building it in house, but we're having to go out and try to recruit people into Chittenden County, and it's tough. And so the question is, how quickly can we spin up a satellite machine shop that can be dedicated to supplying our needs? Same with the composite shop. And so, yeah, that's kind of next on the roadmap, is to figure out how to plant those seeds throughout the state.
Mr. Newton, you seem so well versed on this stuff. How did you ever get involved yourself in this business? You sound like you really know what you're doing. I'll tell you that.
You fake it till you make it, sir. But I grew up on air bases with my dad, and fell in love with aviation early. He was a crew chief mechanic on a bunch of different aircraft. The last one was the 837, and then but he'd retired by the time I was really old enough to know what was going on. But I still got to hang around the 810s for a while over in Syracuse, and I moved here 20 some odd years ago to work at IDX, another kind of innovative company in healthcare, and had the opportunity to kind of build a career leading healthcare companies around the world. And when I now have two young boys, and I can't imagine a better place in the world to raise two kids. And and getting out in the lake and getting out in the mountains. And got a call from a mutual friend of Kyle Clark, our founder and an investor, who said, these guys are really good engineers. Do you want to come help them build an aircraft company? I said, sure, that's my passion. Let's give it a rip. And so I've had this kind of latent passion for aviation that's been sitting on the sideline for 20 plus years. And
Wow.
I'm just pretty excited to be back into it.
Wow. It's just an interesting story. I mean, the public doesn't know all the background like this. This is great. Wow. It's just, we hear so many positive things about it. This is wonderful to have this overview. I can't wait to visit the place. I got to see this. Yeah. That's great.
Anytime.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I think
Yes.
I think that's what's, I agree with Senator Mazza and your passion, and you fake it to make it, but I think you're undervaluing yourself a little bit there. But I think the thing that's most impressive to me is that you understand the supply chain and you understand where the pitfalls are and what everybody wishes that they could fix. And you have a fix for that. And I think that is going to drive your success as much as anything, is you're not afraid to adjust those things and just save everybody money. So yeah, I'm a big fan already. I was the other day when Senator Chittenden introduced us, and I can't wait to get over there.
Yep, that's great.
I really appreciate those kind of words.
That's
And anytime,
Great.
you're
Wow.
welcome.
Fantastic. Anyone else in the committee? Anything to offer?
Yeah, Meza,
Yes, go ahead, Senator Pertwee.
thank you, Chair. One last, or maybe the last question, but it is, have you had, or can you say anything about your working relationship with our electric utilities with, I assume it's Green Mountain Power there, but maybe as you look at these other airports, you might have come across some of our other utilities, and anything about the infrastructure or in their support of electrification and how you think that kind of goes with what you're doing and with what we're trying to do with vehicles and things like that. Does that play into your?
Yeah, so we work with a number of, so oddly enough, Burlington Electric has this little island out here at our hangar where we put our initial charging station on. And to put a 1.2 megawatt peak power load charging infrastructure anywhere takes some doing. You need three-phase power. You need a lot of infrastructure to be put in. Beyond that, we also, so our batteries, when they come off the aircraft after a year and a half or so, will live on the grid for another decade doing grid tied energy storage and energy arbitrage and kind of microgrid type work, which is also really interesting from a rural state perspective about providing energy surety if there's a disaster. But within, we called Burlington Electric and we were prioritized virtually immediately. We had similar experiences with Green Mountain Power and some work that we've done around the state. They'd like to partner with us on some of the electrification work we've done. Rutland was a joint effort between ourselves and the utilities down there. So and it's actually interesting. We've the 11 that we have up and running, the charging stations we have up and running, and the 60 that we're having processed. Part of the reason that we're choosing these smaller airports and not going into city centers is because it's almost anti-friction, right? The airports want you there, the utilities want you there. We have a charger in Springfield, Ohio, where there's an aircraft charger inside the airport fence, and there's an electric car charger outside the fence that the utility there paid for, because it's the only level 3 supercharger in like a 30 square mile radius. So you have Teslas coming in to charge in this airport out in the middle of nowhere, and bringing awareness and unblocking the electrification deserts that exist in the rural parts of our communities. And so we found great resonance nationally with the utility companies, and in Vermont it's been even better because it's they're supporting a Vermont company. So yeah, it's been great across the board.
Thank you. Anyone else this morning? What an excellent presentation. I thank you very, very much for doing that this morning for us, because it's so exciting. I mean, to hear something like this, and when you hear about the company, but you don't know a lot of the details, this has been very beneficial to a lot of us to help us get through this. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the time, and please do stop by.
We're going to make it a point. Do we have to say we know Senator Chittenden, or just can we come out?
Just show on up. Just knock on the door.
He He
If you
says we
come
can't
around,
go unless we check with him first, so.
no, you can come on and if
Okay.
you come around lunchtime, we'll feed you too. So it's
Thanks a
benefit
lot.
across the board.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Talk soon.
Okay.
Okay, Jeannie, you can take us off live.